We live in a world that's losing its religious standpoint, but is growing more spiritual every day. I spoke with the Reverend Linda Rauch about where spiritualism is today and how it can grow in homes around the world. With an amazing resource such as Arthur Findlay College here in the UK, where I first met Linda, she talks about how the stars aligned and spirits opened up the opportunity to attend the course.
It was one of those typical spirit-led things that I had seen a course that I wanted to do. I decided I couldn't do it because school holidays, etc., etc. And then I heard Andy Bing do a spirit talk YouTube posting, and I thought, yeah, he sounds interesting. Maybe I can go. And then, the world just opened up, and some of my patients cancelled, and this happened, that happened, and the waters parted, and I was able to go, and luckily they had a space.
I'm Julian Jenkins, and this is That's the Spirit. Linda Rauch is a medium, homeopath, counsellor, Wiccan priestess, and spiritualist reverend. I asked her what was the main driver for her attending her latest course at Arthur Findlay College.
The reason why I tend to go, if I'm really, really truthful about it, is that it's lovely to be among other people, other mediums, other like-minded people. And that's the main pull for me. Obviously, I love having the incredible teachings that we get with the staff there, who are really exceptional mediums. And in terms of developing my mediumship, there's nothing else that compares. It's fantastic. So that's all really good, but it's just great when you're in a world where most of the people, materialistic people who don't really value what we do. It's great to be somewhere where you know that everybody there does.
We're so blessed to be part of such a wonderful organisation and movement like spiritualism, but speaking for myself, having worked in a very alpha male environment, it's sometimes difficult to admit that you're a spiritualist.
It's we are so blessed, and it's any of us who do this kind of work, we recognise just how special it is, and it's not something that can be laughed at or something that can be marginalised. It actually becomes so important. It becomes very central to your life. So it's very important to get the support of other people that understand that.
Using our skills for healing is hugely important. How do you sort of encompass some of this into your homeopathy?
Well, I think one of the things, in fact, that we talked about with John Johnson, who was my teacher at Arthur Findlay last month, was that actually a medium is somebody that is not, essentially it's a larger word than just somebody that brings through spirit and gives messages from your dead loved ones. Actually, it's a way of life, and that one day you can just kind of stand and being a medium without actually having to say a word, and people will get everything they need. Ultimately, in the ideal world, when people who come to see you are able to access that, you just stand there and you kind of channel the energy of spirit, because spirit is imbued in everything that I do when I am my most expanded. Obviously, when I've had a bad day, I've had a fight with, the postman, or some silly little thing, the cat's been sick again, or whatever it is, you can track down into the human life, into the human day-to-day, the rat race, etc. But when you're able to hold that sense of expansion, that divine, then that being a medium is in everything that I do. In terms of actually using spirit guidance in my work, and getting messages and actually hearing specific words or ideas or whatever, I'm very open to that with the homeopathy, and I'm very lucky because I do have whoever it is on the other side of life, whether they were fabulous mediums, fabulous homeopaths or doctors or whatever, but I do get a lot of very, very good information through. Sometimes it's remedies that I've never heard of, and there are thousands and thousands of remedies, so any homeopath could not possibly know every remedy. And I'll hear it and I think, I didn't even know there was a remedy. I'll look it up and there it is, just for exactly those symptoms. But I won't mix the two in the sense that it's always backed up with the homeopathic literature. I won't just base it on, I'm told a remedy and I'll give a remedy. I always check it out. That's, the structure of homeopathy.
We've discussed many times about where we're seeing dwindling numbers in churches, especially in terms of the Sunday service. But yet people they have a thirst. They want to quench the tribe. Look at social media, how people gravitate together through community. And how can we resonate with a much wider audience than we're currently doing and make it applicable and authentic for today's younger generation as well as everybody else?
And it was very interesting because ideas have developed since then in my mind. And, I think, again, if you're sensitive or medium, very often we've kind of all been searching for our tribe. And that's one of the purposes of spiritualist churches, is that that's a place where you'll find other members of the tribe. So for me, a spiritualist church like Arthur Findlay is going to a place where I know that I'll be accepted and that I'm not just, entertainment or a circus act or somebody to be teased or to be questioned. So that is a big part of the church experience for me, and why I was drawn to go into the spiritualist churches in the first place. I can't say I'm a regular goer now, partly because I do feel, as you were saying, that it's become a bit formulaic, and that doesn't necessarily suit everybody. So finding new ways to allow people to actually get what they need. So we've talked about the fact that it's important to kind of find community. It's also important to get messages from loved ones. Obviously, that's what draws people to the churches. But it's also important to have a sacred space where people can feel connected to the divine or to spirit. And sitting in a church when you really do feel the presence of the divine is really powerful. And that all depends on the medium. So I think what is the biggest anchor for creating a church that will attract people is the quality of the medium and their ability to hold the light and to project that and make that available to the congregation. And the more that happens, the better the mediums are and the more connected they are to their heart and their own personal journey, so that they have actually done enough work on themselves that they aren't just spouting words they don't necessarily relate to, but they've lived it. They live mediumship on a day-to-day basis, and they're talking from their heart, and they are standing there being spirit. I think that's what's going to draw people in, not necessarily singing hymns. That can have its place as well. The inspired speaking maybe can have its place as well. But I think if there's more of a fluid experience in the churches, I think that will make it more relevant.
We've spoken a few times, and one of the things that you talked about is the ability within a church environment to just be with spirit, be with the divine. And that is so important, but also so powerful. How do we continually look to develop that and make it so, people will come back week in, week out?
Well, the other thing is that, we are creating a temple. I mean, that's where I learned a lot from the Wiccan work that I did. You're creating sacred space. So everything should be connected to the whole point of why you're there, which is to hold the light and allow people to have that divine connection. And so everything needs to point towards that. So whether it's the colour of the paint in the room, whether, the church itself is a church, when it's in a community centre and there's no atmosphere that's created in the bricks and mortar, you can create it if it's done with intention wherever you are. It doesn't have to be necessarily bricks and mortar, although obviously that helps. Just by having things around the room that indicate that somebody has purposely set up a space where, the spirit is invited in. So there's that as well. It's about creating ritual and creating sacred space, and then raising the power, which we do with the flow. And if you're in tune with spirit while you're working, that flow and that raising of the power will happen naturally. It's putting aside our own ego and just saying, okay, we're going to get it wrong. All mediums do. There's going to be mistakes. That's okay. But I'm just going to do the best I can. I'm going to open up and then just let it all flow.
You talk quite a bit about the quality of the medium, but how do we improve the quality? How do we get mediumship to be better? How do we get it to the point where we can leave our inhibitions at the door, not worry about making mistakes, go with it, and also communicate? Stop this. We don't want to hear you can only say yes or no. Let's have a communication. How can we support each other and make sure that we are all going in the right direction?
Well, I think it all goes back to community. For ourselves, I think as mediums, we really need to support each other. And we really need to just get the message out as much as possible that, if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. I mean, you did something on the Facebook group that you set up for the course. You were supportive to somebody that struggled, and you have to support each other. It's the only way we're all going to get through this, because the rest of the world isn't supporting us. We're constantly being questioned, so we have to support each other. And things like this is amazing, and I want to thank you so much for setting this up and congratulate you, because this is brilliant for us mediums to know that there's going to be something like this once a week, where we know that, there's going to be other people talking about their journey and their experience. And it's all about that. And I think we help each other. We grow more as a community. We will grow better mediums. That is the way it is. No man is an island, and we really need to help each other. And then the congregation will just come. We can't do it. We can't do anything about the congregation, but we can do something about ourselves.
Talking about ourselves, tell us a little bit about your mediumship and your mediumistic journey to where you are today.
Before I do, I just have to say a quick thing, very, very important, is that there's a lot of competitiveness sometimes in mediumship. And I think it's really important to recognise there's 6 billion or 7 billion people on the planet. I don't think we have to worry about being competitive at all. So I just want to say that, because sometimes that comes up and it stops people from feeling good about what they do. But in terms of my mediumship, I also in my bedroom at a very young age used to talk to spirit, and used to get a bit scared, couldn't understand it. And it took me many years to find somebody. I think I was 21 by the time I met somebody who actually had any context for this for me, and gave me a prayer, a guardian angel prayer, which I then kind of used. And that was the only thing that I really had a lot of premonition dreams as a teenager, which was quite scary. But I shushed all down unconsciously. And then I studied everything from tarot, I Ching, runes, astrology. It was a lifetime of study. And then it was probably about 7-8 years ago that a very good friend of mine, so I was doing a lot of psychic work, and she said, do the mediumship. And I was scared, because I was very sensitive, like a lot of us. And I'd never watched The Exorcist, but I'd heard about it. So I was scared of the other side. And I went to a workshop with a wonderful guy called Henry Cummings, and he said, there's scarier people in your own family, probably, than you'll ever meet on the other side of life. And I thought about it and thought, actually, yeah, certain members of my family can really wind me up. It's unlikely that would happen from somebody on the other side, quite as extreme. And boom, that was it. That's all it took. And suddenly, the gates opened again. And, ever since then, it's just been about honing it and finding a way to feel comfortable with it, and the way that I use it.
In trying to spread the word of spiritualism and mediumship, do we have to be careful that we're not going to be able to have a one-size-fits-all policy?
Right. Well, during my initiation, my Wiccan initiation, that part of the ceremony is one of the prayers is basically it's the little phrase: don't throw pearls before swine. It's not that, but it's something equivalent. And I always think to myself, okay, it's very wise to not offer what we do to people who are not willing or open to listening to it, because you're just setting yourself up. It's great to have a conversation, and you can put energy into that if you have the energy. But personally speaking, I don't have the energy. If somebody wants to challenge me about the mediumship, I'm walking away. In terms of spreading the word, people have their own personal awakenings at different points, and the light will go on for them, and they'll think, you know, if there was a way I could connect with my mother, I would really love to do that. How can I do that? And I think they're there. So those people who are there will find us anyway. Those people who are not there, they're not going to find us. And I just try and limit my exposure to negative attitudes, not because I think it's wrong to do that, because actually for some people it's very right. But for me personally, I'm just a bit exhausted. You know, I'm mid-50s and I've kind of reached a point where I want an easy life. So for me, if somebody wants a reading, they're welcome to it. But if they want to ask me a million questions about how it works, why, is it really true, then I'll probably send them on to somebody else who's willing to do that kind of work. If they want to learn, I'm totally open to that. But if they challenge me, oh, I don't believe it really, then, you know, prove it to me, then I'm not about that.
If you are going to teach somebody, what would be the number one Reverend Linda Rauch's tip?
Again, Henry Cummings, the first thing he said, or the most significant thing that he said in the that first day that I went to, was be brave. That's it. Be brave. Just brave it out. Whatever it is, you will have, even at Arthur Findlay, there's always the Weeping Wednesday where everybody starts to, you know, everything comes up and everyone's crying. Not everyone, some people. You know, it really does take it out of you, this whole thing. We're doing intense work, really powerful, really important work in the world. And we pay a bit of a price because we have to be in integrity all the time. And therefore we have to look at our own stuff all the time. Otherwise we're going to be held up on it. Something's going to happen that's going to show us our own stuff. And so just being brave with the whole thing and keep going no matter what, and find friends, build a community, find your tribe. Don't give up. We're doing really, really, really important work in the world, and the world may not be, a lot of the world's not necessarily ready for what we do in the way that we want them to be, but that will happen. In another 10, 20 years, I think we'll be much more integrated into the culture that we live in.
So at what point did you love the spiritualist movement that much to be ordained and become a reverend?
Well, when I was at school, in fact, I found my old school report recently when I was about 12. I was really good at Latin and I was really good at religion. They were my two good subjects. The rest were really bad. My father said to me that I was going to be the first Jewish pope. So he put the idea in my head that of being a reverend in some way. I used to do a lot of memorial services because I was a counsellor for HIV and AIDS patients who are all heroin addicts, and I saw a lot of people die, and nobody wanted to do their memorial services. So I used to do them with a very dear friend of mine, and I did a lot of ministering at that time. So it's something I've always done. And this was just putting a label on it, really. And again, with the initiation with the Wiccan priestessing, that was another thing where I've held ceremony and ritual in various forms for many years. So it's really just another label. But in terms of the spiritualist aspect of it, this is where I am now. You know, mediumship seems to me that it has the greatest energy, the greatest pull, the greatest magnetism for me, because even though I was counselling for many, many, many years and I saw people change and transform, it takes a while. But you can connect them with one thing that their mother has said to them from the other side, and bam, their guilt drops. They can let go of the grief. They can transform. They can reconnect with their husbands, because their mother has reminded them of how they were when they were young. It is so transformative that, as somebody, I've always been a healer, and it's the best healing tool I've come across, and so that's part of it too.
With over 25 years of experience in the healing profession and a writer for the Journal of the Association of Registered Homeopaths, the Reverend Linda Rauch is leading the way in spiritual homeopathy, and her work can be found at www.spiritualhomeopathy.co.uk. I'm Julian Jenkins, and you've been listening to That's the Spirit.